All right, good afternoon, everyone. We will call this meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee to order. And just to advise, this is the last meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee. It will be merged with the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee on November 1st to become the Safety and Social Standing Policy Committee. So, Mr. City Clerk, could I please have a roll call?
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Councillor Campbell.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Palladino.
Present.
All members are here. Quorum established.
Thank you very much. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. First motion up is the adoption of the agenda from Deputy Mayor Campbell. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting on October 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Deputy Mayor Campbell.
Are there any changes that we know of? Call the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Thank you very much. Up next is also Councillor Parker. Consent agenda. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting be held on July 13th, 2023 be approved and the chair and city clerk be authorized to sign the same. Councillor Parker.
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. We have no presentations, but we do have a submission. So first submission 6.1 from Mr. Enns, General Manager of Regulatory Services, with regards to bylaw 6422 taxi amendments. Mr. Enns.
Yes, good afternoon, committee. This item is from the March 9th, 2023 Community Safety SPC, where the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommended that the license bylaw be changed to accommodate two matters. One, that the regulated fares and charges for operation of taxi operations, as well as device associated with the fares and charges be removed from the regulations, and further that the requirement for a taxi to be equipped with a top light be removed. The changes in the red line version are in front of you. If you have any questions on that, I'm willing to answer any questions you may have.
All right, I am not seeing any questions at all coming in the queue. Councillor Campbell?
Just, I wonder what's the response been from the cab industry? Is everyone, I mean, are these the people that are bringing forward the changes and on board with them?
I think the industry as a whole is ready and prepared for this change. I know some are more excited than others. I think some are looking to see what comes of this, and it's a change in their operations. But for the most part, I think the cab industry is ready for this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, seeing that we have no other questions at all, I have a motion from Councillor Palladino, bylaw 6422, taxi amendments. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council provide first reading to bylaw 6422, a bylaw to amend the business license bylaw 5658. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, draft bylaw 6422 is before us, has been prepared and recommended for first reading. The intent is to amend the current license bylaw 5658 and include two objectives that came out of the previous meetings, namely the deregulation of fares and charges, whereby the city is out of the establishing fees business. And secondly, that the requirement for a taxi to be equipped with a top light be removed. So as mentioned, the recommendation goes to council and would give first reading to bylaw 6422. And we'll call a question if there are no further questions.
No, I'm not seeing any further questions. Vote's been called. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Item 6.2, Animal Bylaw Review. Mr. Enns again.
Yes, thank you. With me today is Skylar Plurd, who's the Director of Community Services, our contractor out at the city shelter. We're both here to answer any questions you may have. Our bylaw is about 20 years old, and it's had a number of amendments since, but this is our dog bylaw. And it's followed up with the wild and domestic animal bylaw and the pigeon bylaw, which are quite dated and quite old as well. So we are going forward and going to do a review of these bylaws and come back with new provisions and modernize the provisions. And I guess what we're here for today is just kind of have a discussion and see if we're on the right track. Questions, I mean, the cat bylaw has come up in previous times I've been here, and sometimes there's two sides of that particular argument. So we wanted to know if we're on the right track in terms of bringing back cat bylaw provisions, putting it all in one bylaw, obviously, and whether or not you want a full look at that and a costing out of what it would cost to enforce a full-on cat bylaw, whether you'd want us to look at some smaller provisions in that particular range. And then since we're looking at the wild and domestic bylaw, or animal bylaw, questions have come up in the past. It's come here in front of council twice since I've been here. The idea of urban hen pilot projects and the like. So we're just here today. Hopefully you have some questions for us and just have a discussion about whether we're on the right track and looking at everything, or should we be restricting our review to different areas. And if you have any other questions about the animal bylaw or care and control program, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Do any members of the committee have any questions with regards to this? Councillor Crowson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward, because certainly it is. I mean, I know we've laughed about the pigeon bylaw, that, you know, I can leave my pigeons fly around my backyard for an hour every day if I have wild, or if I have racing pigeons. So we certainly talked about some of these. How broadly are you going? Because, I mean, like, we have somebody who brings a goat into town on a regular basis, right? Doesn't live in town, but brings a goat in. So how broadly are you looking at this? Is it going to be, like, is it going to be the bees? Is it going to be everything? So are we doing a comprehensive review, knowing that, you know, people are pushing this bylaw in all kinds of ways?
Well, I'll first start with the bees. We've mentioned bees. We don't have an expertise in that area, and that wasn't something we were planning on looking at unless council has a request for us to look at that the same. Just to point out on the pigeon bylaw, it actually was in effect. We actually were handing out licenses up to just a few years ago. I guess it was a sport that came back into, but it has been, we don't have any licenses and haven't had licenses for 2-3 years now. When we first looked at this, what we were planning on doing is modernizing the dog bylaw. There's a lot of good provisions in it, but there's some provisions that we would like to update, maybe take a look at the fines and the like. And if we're looking at the wild and domestic one to do, that's where I think a lot of new ideas are going to come in. And what's going to help us in that particular regard right now is there is a lot of cities in Alberta and across the Western Canada right now, right in the middle of doing this. They've either passed new animal provisions or they're in the process of doing what we're doing and reviewing it. And part of our plan here is to go to some of these other cities and find out what provisions are the new provisions that everyone's looking at, what kind of manpower and resources it takes to enforce everything. So in that particular vein, we're going to do a whole look at the different wild and domestic animals. For instance, a rabbit. I think our wild domestic says you only allowed one rabbit. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where that comes from, but it just seems a little,
so
it seems very out of date. So that's one area where we're really going to look at things. Definitely modernize the dog bylaw, but there's questions out there as to emotional animals, emotional support animals and stuff like that. So we're going to, both Skylar and myself and a number of people from our administration are going to take a look at this and just see what's out there, what the best practices are, and see if we can bring back some best practice for us, given what our resource and manpower limits are.
So this is basically the opening gambit to start public engagement and to start investigation if it passes council.
That's true. We plan to be at the NMAX Center for the Communications thing. We've got a few questions there just to start out with. And then we're going to go out and start collecting data, start looking at the different things, and then we might come back then with a more detailed survey later on to get more feedback from the public to see what everyone wants. And obviously we have an animal advisory committee. We hope to use their expertise in this area. So yeah, we're going to do a wide range look at some areas. We don't want to fix what's not broken. So there's a lot of provisions that work really well in our dog bylaw and the like. But we're going to see if there's different areas, different new strategies out there that different communities have, and try to come up with best practices.
One of the reasons we have some of the things in the bylaw is about public health. And so how will you plan to, or how do you plan to engage with the health inspectors? Because I'm certain they'll be having some interest in some of the changes.
Yeah, we work very closely with them on a lot of different files, and we certainly know a lot of the officers over there and the like, and we do intend on talking to them about this issue. For instance, whenever there's a dog bite, they are informed of that. So they work closely with the animal shelter in this particular range. So yes, we definitely want to get their opinion on these things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, you've been in this for a while. I mean, you know, as you go in, and obviously you're open-minded, you want to see all of the concerns, but are there any things, especially from a public perception, that you really need to focus in on? Or do you find that, like, if you were to make a list, are there 5 priorities right now?
There's some areas in the bylaw that we want to take a look at, the aggressive dog provisions and the like that we want to relook at, stuff like that. If this committee and council is willing, what we're going to look at again is go back into the cat bylaw thing, which we have done in the past, and we actually brought one forward during budget time. I think it was 2003 was the first one. It came back a couple times later, and we looked into it, but didn't come back to the council level. So that's one area that if we're sent off to look at, we definitely want to take a good look at, see what the new, it's an area that we have tried to address without a bylaw. We have volunteer cat licenses. We have, we don't have fines, but we do have care and control of daily fees for cats that stay in there. There's a small trapping program and the like. So we do stuff in terms of trying to control cats in the city, but a lot of other cities have licensing programs. They have limits on the amount of cats can have in houses and the like. And what we want to do is really look into that, if that's what we're looking into, the cat bylaw. We really want to get a sense, too, of how this is enforced. Because in the past, we've come back and we've done costing on this, and it's having animals stay at the shelter longer costs money, especially nowadays with the vet bills and the like. Having a number of more calls for cats in the neighborhood and the like means we have to have another person probably out at the shelter to take some of these calls and the like. So we're going to really look at the resources people have, what kind of calls, what kind of what kind of public services that their communities want, and then hopefully through our surveys and like try to get a sense of what our citizens want, and really look into that area.
Well, when you talk about animals and bylaws and cats and dogs, I mean, there's so much passion amongst people, and there will be an important part of, I imagine, going into the questions. What about people who are not necessarily involved with animals, but they'll give their input too? I mean, what kind of broad range are you going to glean from all of these different kind of attitudes, do you think? I mean, it's probably kind of a broad question, but
yeah. Well, no, we do want to get a sense of whether there's a number of individuals out there that would like. I know that actually. In the past, we've done some surveys way in the past, and the general census back in the past was that that there's about 70%, and this was back the last time we did this, about 70% of citizens in the city would not be opposed to a cat bylaw, and 21% would be opposed to a cat bylaw back then. So I think there's a general suggestion out there that, let's put it this way, cat bylaws are a difficult thing to enforce. Let's be honest here, okay? Cat bylaws are a difficult thing to enforce. And I don't want the expectation to be out there that we're gonna pass a cat bylaw and you're not gonna see your neighbor's cat in your flower bed, right? So we do want to get expectations of people, what they wanna see with the cat bylaw, because we're not gonna change it overnight that the cats are there. When it comes to feral cats, we have programs in the city. The councils have been very generous in the past. We have the NOCA low cost and spay and neuter program that helps keep stray cats off. We have the Animal Advisory Committee who have a bunch of feral cat colonies that they keep track of and the like. So there's a number of programs we have for that. I guess what we want to get a sense of is what are the problems people are having with cats? I know when we had the issue with the cat house that came up, and people were very upset the fact that so many cats could be allowed in the house. You can have provisions about that, but then when you add the cat licensing provisions, then some people get quite upset about that. They say, why does my cat have to get licensed when it goes outside? Other side of the question is, well, I pay for my dog's license, you should contribute some to this animal shelter because it's animal and cats or whatever. So there's a lot of questions out there, and I'm not here to say we're going to pass a cat bylaw and all your problems are going to be solved. What I want to get a sense of from the citizens is, what we want to get a sense of from the citizens is, what are the issues they're having? What kind of controls and regulations are there out there? And are they successful in other cities? I know when I first looked at this back when, and this was and I haven't checked since, so it could be very changed. But when Calgary passed their cat bylaw, I think it came into effect in 2007, they predicted that dog licenses in the city were about 85% of the people that had dogs had licenses. They came in at about 38-39% for cats after they put it in. And they were quite happy about that. And I was saying, well, 39% is less than 50%. And they said, well, this is the reason why. It's difficult to get, find out where the cats are and everything else. So you can put the regulations in, but what I want to get sense from this review is, are these successful? What are the ones that are successful? How can we do this without coming back and asking the citizens too much money to enforce this? So we want to get back to council and get back to this committee, or the next committee that we're going to be on, and just get a sense that, okay, this is what the concerns that the public has, this is the experience from other cities, and this is kind of what we're going to recommend, and then we can have a debate about where we go from there.
Councillor Crowson?
Aren't you glad I came to visit your committee today? Some of the issues we're seeing a lot of is people aren't spaying and neutering their pets. Since the pandemic, we've seen way more animals than prior, or at least from what I'm hearing. Is there any plans in the bylaw review to be looking at that, how to educate people, how to promote that? Is that one of the things we need to possibly looking at?
And you might have some answers on that one as well. When it comes to spaying and neutering, the city of Lethbridge does spay and neuter animals that go out of the city. We do contribute $45,000 a year to NOCA to help low-income individuals get spayed and neuter their pets. Do you have any other comments on that?
Some feedback on that. Ultimately, in my experience and networking with organizations that my agency works with, one of those being the National Animal Care and Control Association, and through their work, this has been brought up before. Ultimately, forcing people to spay and neuter is essentially next to impossible. Many communities have some sort of financial subsidized program like Lethbridge does. I have seen bylaws in Canada that allow the municipality, in the black and white text of the bylaw, it allows the municipality to spay and neuter people's animals that have come through the shelter more than once, is an example. There is a municipality that if your dog's been picked up more than once in a calendar year, the municipality can spay and neuter that animal before it's released to you. How that works out in practice, I'm not sure, but I imagine there might be some challenges to that. And I don't know if that's a position we would want to be in. Certainly looking at options for more education to spay and neutering. And if there is an opportunity in the future to provide more funds for low-income spay and neuter, I think that would go a long way. It is expensive. It's very hard for people to access any veterinary care, especially right now. It's very, very expensive. Ultimately, it's maybe sometimes too easy to get a pet, and then it becomes difficult to care for it. And when someone can't care for their animal, agencies and municipalities have to get involved. So it would be nice to look at some options. And obviously, I think everybody in this room would be pro spaying and neutering as many animals as possible.
Does the bylaw only look at pet ownership, or does it also look at people who are like breeding cats and dogs from a financial perspective? Like, are we looking at that as well? Because is there any way of controlling that area?
Currently, our bylaws do not regulate breeding outside of a dog fancier's license. However, that is limited to just regulating the number of dogs on a property, and we all know you only need 2 to breed, right? So again, that is something that other municipalities have done. How does that look in practice? We'll have to do some research. Certainly with the state of overpopulation of pets right now, they're obviously coming from somewhere. And so that is something we definitely want to explore. Is there a way for us to regulate breeding a little bit better to ensure we don't have this issue of overpopulation again?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And I see Mr. Lowen has a comment he wants to add to this as well.
One additional policy option that we would be interested in hearing the committee's feedback on around the spaying and neutering question that Councillor Crowson asked was, would there be tolerance in the community or from the committee and council to have significant financial incentive built into the license fees? So many bylaws across the country would say, and I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air, so this isn't what we'd propose, but $500 for a unspayed or unneutered animal, $20 for a spayed or neutered animal, and you provide that evidence. That's another option that provides some financial incentive, but always would have to make sure that you maintain the low income support so that we're not discriminating. So that's another policy option there, and it'd be interesting to hear any feedback from the committee on that.
Thank you very much for that. And I would think that that's something that's going to be included when we take a look at, as you're doing your research in re-examining this overall bylaw. While you're standing, what kinds of animals are we seeing at the shelter? What range of animals? Cats, dogs for sure would be our most popular, but what else are we seeing there that we could look at including an examination of?
So to give a little bit of background on it, I guess, I have been involved with the Lethbridge Animal Shelter for 9 and a little bit years, and just took over as manager a year and a half ago. So I have seen some peaks and valleys or waves and bells, whatever they are, of what is coming through. When I started there, it was lots and lots and lots of cats all the time. Pre-COVID and the very, very beginning of COVID, was basically nothing. We weren't seeing anything coming in at all. And now we see less cats and way more dogs. And I think you could look at data going back 20, 30, 40 years and you would see those ups and downs. Again, right now it's dogs. 5 or 6 years, it could be cats again. It could be both. It's hard to predict that. Although this isn't answering your question directly quite yet, I think we would probably want to look at drafting a bylaw that would put tools in places for us to adapt to the changing environment of what kind of pets people have. Outside of cats and dogs, when we're dealing with exotic animals, livestock, non-traditional house pets, it's not something we see a lot. However, our program our shelter, for one, isn't designed to hold like snakes and fish for long periods of time. And generally, the public probably is aware of that, so we may not even be getting calls where someone has found a lizard. Although we have, last year I think we had 1 lizard and 2 exotic type birds that were found in the community. Obviously, knowing that an animal like that is likely somebody's pet, we still did what we could. We were able to hold it for a short period of time and then rely on rescue groups to take them. Again, with the overpopulation issue, it's hard to rely on the animal rescue groups to take in animals that we can't deal with. It's fine when it's once in a while, but if exotic animals become more popular, which they are, then we may be in a position where we need to look at options to better provide that service. With livestock animals, which are regulated under that wild and domestic animals bylaw, we don't get a huge amount of calls for service on a yearly basis regarding those types of things. The reality is there probably is chickens and other things in people's backyards that we just don't know about. I would say maybe on average 2 to 3 times a year we get complaints about keeping of livestock. Maybe 4 or 5 times a year we get a loose chicken, which we will pick up, but nobody's going to claim that because they're technically not supposed to have it, so we are often left with those, and we just work through our resources to find a place for those animals to go, but we're really not set up long-term. However, those again are things we're seeing a small increase in exotics and livestock inquiries and questions and those types of animals showing up. So who knows what the future will look like when it comes to that.
Thank you very much for that. So going back to you, Mr. Enns, this bylaws review will give us an opportunity to look at all of those animals.
Yes.
As well as what plans we can put into place, even though we might not be getting questions or we may only see 1 random chicken a year. It gives us an opportunity to evaluate what that kind of program might look like, you know, even with other wild and domestic animals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The wild domestic bylaw that we have now is really out of date, and we do need to update it. And so that's another area that we would definitely be looking into as well. Yes. But the one discussion I wanted to have here is: are we on the right track as well in terms of, because it's been turned down a couple times before, with provisions for wild and domestic animals? Does this committee want us looking at backyard hen program, either a pilot program, or is that some area we should be looking into? Because could that be separate from what we're looking at? So it is a question I don't necessarily want to go down that road and get a bunch of information on that if that's not something that people are comfortable with in this community. I know that particular issue has been controversial in the past. So that was one thing I wanted to have a discussion here as well, is just get a sense of are we on the right track when we're looking at that as well?
I'll allow other members of the committee to respond as well, but I would think that if we're doing a review of this, we might as well be doing the whole review at the same time, rather than going back and spending more of your time doing another review.
Okay.
Because it just dovetails together. Councillor Campbell.
I agree. I agree with that. I know we've gone through the hen thing a couple of times, and both times it's come back as we don't need it. I mean, at least that's the public perception, I believe, that they've said this is not a big deal. But there is again, we're talking about passionate people. That's a passionate group of people. So I think a bylaw in that regard would probably help. So for me, I think continue on going down that, at least investigate that, in my opinion. Thanks.
Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with both of you there as well. If we're going to open up the conversation, let's include it all one and for all right now, you know. I think.
And that was our idea as well. I mean, if we're looking at these issues have come up, why not put the research into it, come up with something, and then the debate can happen at the level when we bring forward the provisions. Some provisions can be in, some provisions can be out, depending on what the collective will of City Council is.
Exactly. Thanks. No, I'm not touching that. Don't touch it.
Mayor Higgin. That
I
was
had
me.
no.
That was me. Never mind. That was me
Okay,
seeing it popped up.
I'm like, I don't think I put my arm up. But
And I was doing so well up till then. Do we have any other questions or comments of the presenters? All right, seeing none, I have a motion here from Councillor Parker. Animal bylaw review, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council direct the city manager to provide an amalgamated draft animal control bylaw with modernization to repeal and replace dog control bylaw 5235, wild and domestic animal control bylaw 3383, pigeon bylaw 2609, and include draft provisions for the regulation of cats by Q3 2024. Councillor Parker.
If no one else has anything to offer, I'll just call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.